Merry Christmas and a happy holidays to all, or at least I would say if I actually managed to get this video out on time for Christmas, but unfortunately I got busy. However, all this festive love and cheer has got me in the mood to do some talking about a show I love so very, very much. Toradora. At first, this script started out as an overall review of the series, but I realized, well, that doesn't make much sense, seeing as the show is almost a decade old. So instead, it slowly morphed into a discussion on more specific aspects I think the show really excels at. So join me, sit back and relax, and let's talk a little bit about Toradora, its development of intimate relationships, and its great ability to balance drama with entertainment value. These ideas do go hand in hand when it comes to Toradora. The show is what I would describe as melodrama done in the most fun way possible. Shows such as Kiznaiver are entertaining despite the heavy slog of its melodrama because of Trigger's signature style and commitment to fun, fluid animation. However, rather than approaching the writing as melodrama and finding more simplistic joy in, say, style, Toradora does something I would say is far more difficult and far more rare to see for sure. Both the drama and the fun are infused into the writing, often happening at the same time. Now, just as a side note, what I'm trying to get at here is that melodrama needs something to counteract it. Any raw genre or emotion within the writing needs good direction or some form of interesting set piece so that you don't get too involved in that one emotion alone. You need something to complement it. In the case of melodrama, if you have just raw melodrama and nothing else, well, you have a soap opera, and frankly, I don't mean to ruin anyone's fun, but soap operas are boring as shit. So many times when you watch a melodramatic show, there'll be something to counteract the melodrama, or complement it would be a better term. Now, in Toradora's case, the idea of writing and drama infused at the same time might sound a little weird. So to help illustrate this, I want to talk about one scene in particular and compare it to a few scenes in another show, Golden Time. Now, as a disclaimer, I am using Golden Time as my example on what not to do, but I do understand that it's a very different show with very different value sets, and is also far more focused on its drama, despite being from the same studio and the same author as Toradora. I do like Golden Time, I just think it suffers a lot from writing problems which caught me off guard due to the fact that Toradora in earlier work didn't have these problems. In episode 2 of Toradora, we've already seen the relationship of our main protagonists Ryuji and Taiga develop quite a fair amount in such a short span of time. And this is another strength of Toradora, which ties neatly into the scene I would like to discuss. Toradora is always moving forward. Not a single episode has any relationship stagnate. It's constantly moving, sometimes even backwards if the story calls for it. Every segment of Toradora is doing more than one thing. Comedy, drama, and development, they all exist simultaneously throughout the entire series, making a cohesive identity and a tangible feeling to the entire show. This is best illustrated in a scene found halfway through episode 2 when Ryuji and Taiga lash out at a pole on the side of the road. Taiga begins to wail out on the pole in frustration that she attributes to miscommunication amongst her peers and a great misunderstanding of her life and personality based on surface level assumptions. Ryuji, harboring his own very similar frustrations and wanting to support his newfound friend in his own way, begins to join her wailing on the pole and yelling his frustrations to the sky. And to their surprise, they actually manage to tilt it slightly and begin to happily celebrate this achievement. The idea of randomly ransacking a pole in an attempt to tilt it slightly and then in an outburst of celebrating the success of that ridiculous desire is something fairly comical in nature. In fact, remove the important subtext and development exclusive to our characters and it almost sounds like a setup for a joke from Nichijou. So from this ridiculous set piece of sorts, we get our entertainment value and our fun. Watching them slam their feet into the side of the pole and cheering to celebrate its movement is a fun way to get the audience engaged in the content of the scene, which of itself is far more heavier and nuanced than the childlike playful actions of the characters would suggest. This is still a touching moment that fits very well into Toradora's overarching drama and development, as it gives us clear insight into the current turmoils of Taiga and Ryuji, demonstrates how similar they are despite how wildly different they've appeared to be from this point, and establishes an endearing growing bond of support amongst them, and most importantly, the movement of the pole and their celebration of it helps the audience understand not just how desperate they are to make a change in their current situations, but how willing and capable they are individually and perhaps even more so together. Now again, let's get something clear. Golden Time is a show that A, I enjoy greatly, and B, have not yet finished as of recording this video. However, seeing as I'm discussing a scene from only episode 2 of Toradora, I think it's fair to lightly compare it to earlier scenes in Golden Time as well. A trend I noticed early on into my viewing of Golden Time, which I started directly after finishing Toradora, was that the script felt far less balanced and consistent than I had grown accustomed to. It had the usual disconnect between comedy and drama that so many shows of this genre seem to suffer from. There are moments to be silly, sometimes very silly, and moments to be serious, sometimes very serious. And it's clear right from the get-go that Golden Time is a more mature show with mature subject matter, seeing as the characters are in college and not high school as a majority of anime, and their unflinching resolve to delve deep into the relationship right away and not shy away from discussions of, say, sexuality. However, this far more serious tone conflicts with more silly scenes, oftentimes far more childish than even Toradora, and the separation between these scenes made me feel this all the more. Scenes in Golden Time are far more one-track minded. Usually they're isolated to two people sitting or standing somewhere and talking. They talk through the duration of the drama, develop their characters, and then the scene is over. Silly things happen, sit down, talk about some serious stuff for a bit, and then silly things ensue once again. This isn't that big of a deal. Sure, it's not fantastic writing, but it's not abashedly horrible either. Every scene feels whole and complete of itself, and it doesn't stray too far into muddling or confusing territory that I would ever dare call it a bad show. But it is leaps below what I came to expect from the series, seeing as the source materials for both shows share the same author and were both adapted by JC Staff. And in a way, this is kind of a great thing. If it hadn't been for my decision to watch Golden Time literally the day after finishing Toradora in an attempt to fill that post-show depression hole, I may have never thought so heavily on why exactly Toradora struck such a chord with me. Maybe I would have just chalked it up to the fun characters, great development, wholesome and fulfilling romance, dynamic and fluid relationships, great soundtrack, animation and direction, but instead, I was forced to wrestle with the idea of why Toradora seems to excel so high above the average romance anime. And from that exploration came a realization of just how tightly woven and excellently executed the script of the series is. For me, Toradora's script is one of its strongest points, and that's not something you hear when it comes to anime all that often in the West. This is mostly due to issues with translations and the imperfect nature of them muddling any idea of what the script even was to begin with. But the brilliance of Toradora's scripting ascends beyond the limitations of language and is baked directly into each and every scene of the show. No matter how you translate one word or phrase a sentence, no matter what version of the show you buy, stream, or even torrent, you filthy pirates, you will always come across wonderfully dynamic, multifaceted scenes such as this. And from it you receive a 25-episode series so jam-packed with joy, sadness, laughter, tears, drama, and fun that it feels like you spent an entire lifetime picking apart every little joy it could offer you. Or, at the very least, that's what it was for me. Okay, awesome. So if you're still here, you actually care a little bit about what's going on with the channel, and I'd love to fill you in on all of that, especially after such an extremely long hiatus, and I am so sorry. So let's start with that. My first video came out just around 2 months ago at this point, and I apologize for how long it's taken me to get to another video. I just got very busy with the holiday season and other such things in my life, such as work and so on and so forth. So it has taken me a little bit to find some time to sit down and do this, but I have been writing away at scripts in my free time, and I do have a lot of big projects planned, so I hope you'll be very patient with me getting those out in the future. And I'm sorry, I'll try and make sure that this hiatus isn't so long next time, or at the very least, if it is, you get something far larger for your wait. Speaking of, the next project we're going to be doing will probably have a very similar time frame between when it will be released. Not because I'll be busy, hopefully, fingers crossed, but because it's a very large project that will require a lot of my time to do. And I guess to give you a little hint towards what that will be, it could potentially destroy my channel, as it is not a very popular opinion at all. It's a little bit contrarian, but not contrarian in that I'm doing it simply to be different, but because it's an opinion that I hold very strongly, and not an opinion I see shared very often, so I figured I'd get that out there. It does have something to do with a particular movie by a particular director that was very popular around, I'd say, last year, early last year or so. It's gonna be on your name. Let's just get that out of the way. So I hope you look forward to that. I hope you don't rip me apart because, spoiler alert, I don't really think it's that good of a movie. But I hope you'll listen to at least what I have to say. And yes, because it is a contrarian opinion, I'll have to work about 4 times as hard as anyone that is on the majority side to prove my point, which is why it's going to be quite a long video. I do want to explain in depth why I don't like it. I don't want to just throw empty, meaningless critiques at it. I want to really back up my reasoning. I want to make sure that I have a solid ironclad argument towards it not being that fantastic of a film. So look forward to that. Other than that, the future of this channel, as you've probably seen from the first 2 uploads, the main content I'm going to be taking on is anime discussions and video game discussions. So if that's something that interests you, feel free to subscribe and stick around. If not, maybe don't go too quickly, because in the future I may discuss some Western movies and stuff like that. I'm just generally going to discuss anything I feel passionately enough about that I can make an entire video on it. Other than that, I'm going to be working on some housekeeping with some social media, so stick around with that if you're interested in following me on Twitter. I've never used Twitter, so I got to figure out how to get that up and running. Yeah, other than that, thank you for being so patient with me. I hope you all continue to support me. If there's anything else you'd like me to discuss or talk about, or any suggestions for videos in the future, feel free to comment them. I can't promise I'll get around to all of them, but if there is one particular thing that you mention and I think about it and I think, yeah, I can make a good video on that, I'll definitely take it on and I'll credit you and all of that jazz. So thank you for supporting me. Thank you for being here. Keep on rocking in the free world.